The Tuesday, June 18th meeting of the Monmouth City Council and ask Phyllis Bowman for our roll call, please.
Councillor Belts? Here. Councillor Carey?
Here.
Councillor Lopez is absent. Councillor McKeel?
Here.
Councillor Oberst?
Here.
Councillor Salinas Oliveros?
Here.
Mayor Coontz?
I am present. And Councillor Belts, could you lead us in the flag salute this evening, please? Thank you very much. This evening, we do have a couple of items of business. I'll just go through the agenda here. First of all, we will take public comment on items not related to the public hearings. So we will be conducting a public hearing on an appeal of a variance decision regarding Monmouth Recreation Park. Folks who wish to speak on that issue will be called when we open the official hearing. So we will take other public comments prior to that, then conduct our business agenda. We do have a work session this evening on the climate action plan. That is for information only. If we have public comment on that, we will accept it during the open public comment period, but there is no decision or deliberation this evening. This is just a chance for us to ask staff questions. That will be our agenda this evening, but we will start with the consent calendar. And tonight our consent calendar includes the minutes of our last meeting on June 4th. I would accept any notions of changes or additions or a motion.
I'll move to approve. Second.
Thank you, Councillor McKeel for the motion and Councillor Salinas Oliveros for the second. Seeing no discussion, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. So that does bring us to public comments. Again, I'll be calling upon folks who came with general questions or comments, and we will ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. When you come up to the table here, please state your name, residence. After you push the little button in the middle of your microphone, that is required, and then it will turn red when you're speaking. So we'll start this evening with Wesley Jordan. Wesley, if you want to come up, push the button in the middle there. Thank you.
Hello, and good evening. My name is Wesley Jordan. I reside at 500 Warren Street. Madam Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the council, please allow me to start off by saying thank you. Thank you for your service and your dedication to this community, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you directly this evening. I come before you tonight to further discuss City Ordinance 10.10.040, which describes parking restrictions of trucks on city streets. As you are aware, I have submitted a comment for public record via email, which was discussed briefly at the last City Council meeting. I have gone through all appropriate channels available to me to rectify this concern, ultimately leading me here now. Although the sentiment and the empathy of the council seems to be sincere about this issue, it has failed to garner additional discussion. I'm here tonight to not only put a face to this issue, but to persuade you to reconsider this matter. I'm aware of the reasoning and logic behind this regulation, but I'm also aware that as a community, we must be willing to adapt to suit the needs of our citizens. So my proposal is this: if an exception cannot be made to the current ordinance, then a permit issuance process should be adopted. There is currently a permit that is available for RV parking on the streets. RVs that are larger in dimension and require more space than that of the vehicle that I am requesting permit for. If a permit is available for this type of situation, then surely a permit can be developed for someone in my situation. That way, not only could the city benefit monetarily from issuing these permits, but a hardworking individual such as myself can continue to work and provide for their families without additional stress or hardship. This permit would benefit all parties involved and require minimal effort to implement. I thank you all again for your consideration, and I look forward to resolving this matter in the near future.
Thank you, Wes. And that brings me to Jason Ridgway. Thank you, Jason.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. My name is Jason Ridgway. I'm at 1854 Sterling Drive in Monmouth. The reason why I'm here tonight, once again, is to bring up the issue of the emergency shelter siting review process. As you all know, and as I have come to appreciate, Monmouth is a very welcoming place. We have many very generous citizens. We have very kind-hearted individuals that live here. Something that I feel very appreciative of, and I intend to continue to support. We have an opportunity. I feel it's a defining moment in Monmouth to make a change in our community, and that is to allow an emergency shelter to be created for folks who are either temporarily or long-term homeless. I encourage the council to continue to recall previous speakers, members of the community that have spoken out about their concerns, safety concerns, impacts to our community, and in more than just the not in my backyard type of an argument, but how it affects our resources, our policing, our fire, our medical responses, schools, and other community and city resources. Very much aware that the members of this community are willing to lend a helping hand to help people out that need help, and very appreciative of that. I'm also concerned, however, that people who speak out and offer resources on behalf of a community is a little bit disingenuous. I feel like if there is a intent for those who want to offer resources, they're free to do so, free to engage individuals who are needing help, needing support, down on their luck, be it short-term or long-term, engage them, offer them a meal, donate finances, take them out to lunch, invite them into your house. If those are things you want to do as an individual, we have plenty of individuals in our community who can do so. Speaking out for the city of Monmouth as a whole, as a community that wants to bring in not just the homeless we currently have, but from other communities, I feel that's a very dangerous precedent, and that we have an opportunity now, the council has an opportunity to resist this movement, to change the dynamics of our city. We have examples around us from the Salem area that we can look at as examples of how this city or Church in the Park has functioned, its success, its failures, and we can analyze based on that whether it's good for our city. I encourage you to consider this and resist the deciding. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Steve Milligan.
I'm just going to stand up here. Steve Milligan, 266 Clay Street West, Monmouth. Good evening, Mayor and councilors. Tonight, I'm here wearing my hat as the president of the Friends of the Monmouth Senior Center. As you well know, having sat over in the Senior Center for quite a while in the dimly lit room, recently some lights have been purchased and installed. And so tonight, on behalf of the Friends of the Monmouth Senior Center, this one, can you see that one? I would like to present a check for $9,525 to cover the cost of those lights. And as the additional lights are installed, the Friends will be covering the cost of that. So.
Wow, thank you.
If you've eaten a pancake breakfast, or you've been to our soup and pie, or you've been to our holiday bazaar, or you've been to the craft supply sale, or you've been to, what am I missing? the Victorian tea or the high tea or whatever we call it now. You've participated in helping us make this donation. Thank you.
Thanks so much. We often say that the senior center folks are our hardest working volunteers, and this is certainly testament that we owe the Friends so much for this and many other projects they've actually funded over the years.
So we actually do, well, we did 15 fundraisers last year, and we're going to do 13 this year.
Thank you. Karen Graychick.
My name is Karen Graytrick, 347 North Craven Street. As a longtime resident of Monmouth, I appreciate and enjoy many of the characteristics that make our town a lovely place to live. Over the decades, I have supported and applauded our city and those in leadership roles. However, I would like to state before my city council, I am not in support of the LGBT belief system that our city is promoting. When the pride signs that currently line our main street are displayed, they serve as an endorsement of a specific belief system that many in our town do not share and do not want promoted. Over the years, this individual choice has been elevated in more and more ways. We have so many values, truths, and strengths that we as a city could promote and endorse that many would champion. I don't agree that the LGBT beliefs are the ones that the city of Monmouth should be promoting. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Karen. All right. Thank you very much. And that takes us to our business agenda this evening. And we have, let's see, I'll just double check. It looks like we've got the rest of our comments will be heard during the public hearing on the variance. So first item on our business agenda tonight is actually a meeting with our library board. We do, in fact, meet with these folks regularly to get updates. And so, Chris Obrist, or do you have your chair coming forward? Thank you.
Still on.
Hi, my name is Lucinda Ammerman, and I am a member of the Library Advisory Board for the City of Monmouth Library. I'm going to tell you briefly what we've been doing the past year and a lot about what the library's been doing the past year. So the Library Board, we've mostly looked at some policies. We've reviewed code of conduct. We've updated the confidentiality and privacy. We've looked at an addendum for memorial donations, how to manage those. We are currently looking at the Library Board Ordinance 1292 to see if we can update it to update some of the language. And we also requested that through Councilor McKeel that the city consider providing EAP or Employee Assistant Program benefits to our part-time employees who are front-facing, and the city granted that to all part-time city employees and volunteers beginning July 1st. So thank you very much for that. The library itself has been doing some amazing things. They have had a goal of improving access for all patrons, including non-English speakers, and they have been putting their money where their mouth is. They have added new shelving for paperbacks, reference collection. They've added browsing drawers for the DVD collection, making all of these easier to reach. In addition, they've been shifting collections to shelves that are more easier to access for people of all mobilities. They have been removing checkout limits on media collections so that people aren't having to worry as much about multiple trips if a DVD is what they want. They've also been creating a library collection of things that will include things like DVD players and CD players, also literacy kits and all sorts of things that we don't traditionally associate with libraries, but is becoming more of a standard type of collection within libraries. So this is very exciting. They also have investigated adding powered doors to our restrooms and the Eccles Street entrance. Haven't been able to do that, but Krista's looking into it. And they even expanded their book clubs, so they now have 2 per month. One that is a gentle reads collection approach, and one that's a little more open, and for those that want a little more, I don't know, excitement, whatever. So it reaches broader audiences. The thing that I was really impressed by is the number of partnerships they've done. And as all of you are probably aware, partnerships take an investment of time, and time is a resource we cannot create. We cannot expand it. They have had 9 partnerships this year. They worked with the Polk County Behavioral Services to provide a training responding to patrons struggling with mental health and substance issues, and also emergency procedures. They partnered with court-appointed special advocates in December for their giving tree, with the Ella Curran Food Bank and the Western Oregon University Food Pantry for a food drive, and Windermere's Coat and Blanket Drive. They partnered with Monmouth Arts and Culture Commission to have a community art show. The Polk Marion Early Learning Hub to promote patron access to the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, which will mail a book once a month to any child under 5 if a family signs up. They partnered with Central School District and had elementary students create a window display for Black History Month. They worked with the Monmouth Police Department for Craft with a Cop. They worked with OSU Extension Gardening Services for a program in March. Budgets are tight. They are working on some significant restructuring of their staff. They are going to move the adult services librarian to an assistant director and have a leadership team, which will split supervision duties. They will be able to improve workflows. They will be able to provide better training and more training for their part-time employees, because better trained employees provide better services for our community. They've done a lot, and I think that our library staff should be applauded for everything they're bringing to our community. Thank you.
Hang on, Lucinda. Let's see if there are any questions for the representative of the
Sorry, it's my first
Library Advisory Board, since you came to represent all of the volunteers on the board.
I did.
Any questions for Lucinda? We get a regular report from Councilor McKeel, so I think we're up to date. All right, now.
I have to
thanks.
say Lucinda's was better than mine, cumulative, so nice job.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And again, we always mention that particular group of volunteers agrees to meet at 7 o'clock in the morning. So particularly vigorous group there. So thanks very much.
We drink a lot of coffee.
A lot of coffee,
Yeah.
a lot of donuts. Yeah. All right, that brings us to the public hearing that we have scheduled this evening on a variance, a decision regarding Monmouth Recreation Park. And because this is a formal application process and a legal process, I'm actually going to ask Lane Shetterly to read the script to indicate the order of events for us this evening. Lane, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This will be a public hearing on variance file number 2401. The hearing will be conducted in accordance with the Monmouth City Code and state law. Specifically, the staff will first present the staff report and recommendation. The applicant, which is the city, will then have an opportunity to present the proposal and address any issues raised by the staff report and recommendation. For public testimony, the mayor will first ask to hear from people who would like to speak in favor of the proposal. The mayor will then ask to hear from people who have neutral comments or questions about the proposal, that is neither for nor against. And finally, those in opposition to the proposal will have an opportunity to present testimony. City staff may then present additional material and recommendations based on the public testimony and have the opportunity to have the last word. After each presentation, the mayor will ask for questions from the council. If you intend to present oral testimony, please fill out a request to speak form located at the back of the room and give that to city staff. If you are attending the meeting virtually, please send a message using the chat function to the city recorder, Phyllis Bowman. We are recording this hearing, so please also clearly state your name and address when you are called to speak. This will help in preparing accurate written minutes of the hearing and also assist with mailing copies of the decision to all interested parties. If you have written testimony or other evidence to submit, please give that to staff so it can be entered into the record. We ask that each speaker limit themselves to no more than 3 minutes. Please remember that all presentations will be timed. You will be informed when your allotted time has expired. All speakers exceeding the time limit will be asked by the mayor to immediately conclude his or her remarks. If you do not finish your presentation, you may provide a copy of a written statement to the staff. The applicant will not be limited to 5 minutes, but they are encouraged to limit their presentations as they are able to be respectful of our time constraints tonight. In order to minimize repetitive testimony, organizations are encouraged to have only one person speak for the group, with other members of the organization standing to show their support. Each person may testify only once unless called back to the podium at the request of a council member or the mayor to respond to a question. The mayor and the council are required to disclose any conflicts of interest and ex parte contacts that they have with the proposal or the applicant, that is, whether they have any financial or other personal interest in the proposal, and whether they have spoken with anybody about the proposal outside of this hearing. Council members, your association with the city does not constitute a conflict of interest, and any communications that you may have had with staff does not constitute an ex parte contact. Also, councilors may only participate if they can do so without undue bias for or against the application. Do any councilors wish to make any disclosures? Seeing none, state law requires me to tell you a number of things at the beginning of the hearing. First, the applicable substantive criteria that apply to this application are contained in the written staff report and will be identified and discussed in the oral staff report. All testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward these criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or city code that you believe apply to this application. By the same token, council, your decision must be based on the applicable criteria and only on the applicable criteria as they are presented or as are presented to you by witnesses. Third, failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker or other people an opportunity to respond may preclude appeal of a decision on this application based on that issue. So, Madam Mayor, I'll turn it over to you if you want to call on the staff report from the applicant, unless there are any questions first from the council as to any of the ground rules.
All right, thank you very much. Then we shall open the hearing and ask for the staff report from our city community planner, Carter Crick.
Hello, my name is Carter. I'm the community planner, and I'm here to present the oral staff report on the appeal of variance 2401, the decision to deny a wetland variance in Monmouth Recreation Park. The application was made by the city of Monmouth for a major variance to Monmouth City Code Title 18, Chapter 170, the wetland protection areas. Their request was to build an elevated boardwalk and a portion of a paved pathway, as well as an interpretive nature trail through a significant wetland area. It would provide additional connections between Monmouth Recreational Park and Margaret Street East, as you can see in the map on the slide. It was a Type 3 request. The Planning Commission made a decision, as discussed, to deny the variance, so it comes to City Council for appeal, or it has the option to. Here's a vicinity map orienting us to the area. You'll see the yellow star indicates the area where the boardwalk is proposed. Some background, how we got here. In 2020, the city went through the process to draft and adopt a Parks and Recreation Master Plan. This plan identified a general desire from the people surveyed, the input from the community, to see more walking trails, and especially ones that can highlight nature. Additionally, this specific project is listed or is named, including a conceptual plan in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So pursuant to that master plan, the Parks and Recreation, the Public Works Department pursued a grant from the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department to facilitate the work we're discussing tonight. In 2023, the Parks Department, the Public Works, they contracted with a an engineering firm to perform a wetland delineation and draft plans to construct the paved pathway as well as the boardwalk. In February 2023, it was determined that in order to execute those plans, they would require a wetland variance. So they filed the variance application. Notice was sent out to residences, property owners within 250 feet of the subject area. And in March of 2024, we had a hearing at the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission decided to deny that based on criterion B. After that, in April, the City Council decided to call up the decision, and that brings us here today. The variance criteria that is to be used to make this decision has 5 components. The first is through the application of this chapter, the property has been rendered not buildable. Second is the applicant has exhausted all other options available under this chapter to relieve the hardship. 3, the variance is the minimum necessary to afford relief. And 4, no significant adverse impacts on water quality, erosion, or slope stability will result from the approval of this hardship variance, or these impacts have been mitigated to the greatest extent possible. Lastly, finally, number 5, the loss of vegetative cover shall be minimized. So the staff presented their findings related to those criteria and this application. Those are included in full as attachment number 1, the staff report for the Planning Commission hearing. But to summarize those findings, staff found that the property is unbuildable because a majority, practically all of it, is significant wetlands. Alternatives were explored, including routing the boardwalk east out of the wetlands and closer to the sewage pond, but that brought it in conflict with the security fencing there. Impacts have been mitigated in creating these connections and pathways, both by the selection of using the boardwalk, which disturbs less soil, is built out of non-pollutant generating materials, and also through the best practices that are going to be used during construction. That includes best management practices related to reducing sediment erosion, baffling gravel where trucks will be entering the work site, as well as after the work, spreading a native seed mix and reestablishing the native vegetation in the area. Staff also, since the Planning Commission hearing, developed an alternative design. This design, as you can see in the slide above you, reduces the number of connections to Margaret Street. It maintains that connection over on the left or the west side of this picture, that paved pathway connecting to the southern sidewalk on Margaret Street. And it creates a boardwalk that goes out towards the gazebo, which was planned and included in the original proposal, and then goes back into the park. It does not make an eastward track to that north side of Margaret Street and the pedestrian connection there. It is, if the City Council decides not to prioritize the maximum number of pedestrian connections, then this alternative meets that minimum necessary to afford relief criteria. Staff's recommendation is to approve variance 2401 to allow construction of a pedestrian pathway and nature boardwalk trail, a portion of which would cross a significant wetland area in Monmouth Recreational Park. Sample motions and alternatives are found on page 3. I'm happy to relay those if you'd like. That's my presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We don't have any motions yet. We'll continue with our hearing. So any questions of Carter before we invite testimony? Councilor Hobers?
Carter, just one quick question on the map of the alternative. In the area at the top of that map around the gazebo, am I to understand that it's elevated enough that it is not wetlands?
Correct. That is out of the wetlands. Where the gazebo will be sited is out of the wetlands area.
The same is true about the land right across the end of the neighborhood and across the end of Margaret. That's also high and dry.
Yeah, with the exception of a corner where that path turns and
Right.
briefly, but yeah, correct.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure I was interpreting the map correctly. Thank you.
Counselor Carey.
I'm scrolling to the staff report that you gave to the Planning Commission, but I think I can recall one of the criteria or one of the criteria for approval that was included in that is that that all applications would need to be approved with Bureau of State Lands, U.S. Corps of Engineers, forgotten the other one, there were 3.
Correct.
And I'm wondering what the status of those applications are, excuse me, and where they fit in this process. And sort of to get to the bottom line on that line of questioning, should the variance be approved, but the other applications were denied, this is a dead project. Is that right? Or at least that portion of it?
It is my understanding that if we approve this, but there's a joint permit application with, as you mentioned, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Oregon Department of State Lands, and Fish and Wildlife, if they denied it, the project would not go forward. They denied that application.
And do you have any idea on the timeline on that?
I do not.
Thank you.
Other questions of staff?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm looking at the minutes from the Planning Commission, and there was a question that came up about the plants that would be removed and what would be planted in their place. And so the plan that you're showing us now, the alternative route, how much of those plants will be removed and replaced? And it says here that's a mix of seeds that needs to be planted. It's not what's there already. Is that correct?
My understanding is the mix of seeds are going to be mostly grasses, and the wetland work will impact grasses, and the grasses will be what are replaced. I'm not sure what other vegetation is will be impacted by this particular project.
Other questions? Counselor Oberst, your mic is still on. If you...
Sorry.
All right, that's it for the moment. So we'll excuse you. Thank you, Carter. And we will hereby open the testimony. So I will take any.
Madam Mayor, sorry
Yes,
to interrupt.
yes.
We do have somebody representing the applicant for
Oh,
the
we
city,
do.
Russ Cooper.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, Russ Cooper then, representing the city of Monmouth. Thank you.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, for the record, Russ Cooper, Public Works Director for the City of Monmouth. Thank you for your consideration and review tonight of the Planning Commission's March 20th decision to deny variance 2401, a request by Monmouth Public Works to grant a variance to the city's wetland protection area ordinance, allowing for the construction of a boardwalk and a portion of paved path in an identified wetland in connection with a Monmouth Recreation Park improvement project currently underway. As described in the staff report and in Public Works' application, this project has two components that impact the existing wetland. One is a portion of paved multi-use path connecting the adjacent residential neighborhood with Monmouth Recreation Park. The second component is a raised boardwalk intended to provide access through wetland to a wildlife viewing gazebo. The project design team has taken steps throughout the process to minimize the impact of these improvements on the wetland while still meeting the community's goals and intent for this component of the park improvements identified in the city's 2020 Parks Master Plan. The paved path is an 8-foot wide paved asphalt surface pedestrian path that meets accessibility standards for folks with disabilities. This path provides connection between the adjacent residential neighborhood and the park and beyond to schools, a commercial center, transit stops, and other public-facing services. The alignment of the path closely follows an existing unimproved path that is frequently used by citizens living in the adjacent neighborhood. The area of permanent impact to the wetland by this path is calculated to be 165 square feet, representing about 20 feet of the total 240 feet of paved path that is shown on this visual here. The second component, a raised 8-foot wide boardwalk, is designed to provide controlled access through the wetland to a wildlife viewing gazebo, minimizing this feature's impact on the wetland and the wildlife using this natural resource. The construction style uses helical piles and raised wood decking, is specifically designed for wet areas, and is designed to minimize wetland impact at the time of construction and ongoing. The proposed design selected a short and direct path to cross the wetland while still meeting the intent and purpose of this facility. To further reduce the impact, as was identified earlier, the wildlife viewing gazebo has been intentionally placed outside the wetland footprint and does not represent a direct impact on the wetland. It is also worth noting that these park master plan improvements have been limited to the southern portion of the available existing natural space and represents a small percentage of impact to the total wetland, habitat, and open space in this area. The proposed improvements will also have positive impacts. Foremost, it is a public education component. Use of educational signs focused on wetland protection, wetland habitat, wildlife viewing, bird watching, and etiquette will be installed along the boardwalk and at the viewing gazebo. Public access to bird watching will be expanded. The proximity and accessibility to local schools within walking distance provides opportunities for this facility to be used as a field lab for students. Partnerships. Throughout the planning of this project, the Monmouth Public Works Department has developed partnerships with the Oregon State Parks, the Visitor Center in connection with the Willamette Valley National Wildlife Refuge Complex, as well as the Salem chapter of the Audubon Society. Each of these agencies have core values of protecting and preserving natural resources and wildlife through encouraging access and public education around preserving these natural resources. These improvements are identified in the city's 2020 Parks Master Plan. The 2020 Parks Master Plan is founded on a solid citizen engagement process. Feedback opportunities included open houses, music in the park information table, online and in-person surveys, a citizen advisory board participation, as well as public hearings. Monmouth Recreation Park was one of 3 parks that were deemed priority parks for improvements in the 2020 Master Plan. Design decisions reflect community priorities. Of the 269 respondents to these open surveys, 80% felt that Monmouth does not have enough neighborhood walking and biking trails. When asked to prioritize improvements, respondents identified building recreational trails as slightly more important than protecting open space and natural areas, but both were important. 80% were very supportive of multi-use trails, and 50% prioritized expanding nature and wildlife viewing opportunities. I'll wrap up this with these last 2 points. These improvements also meet the Oregon statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation priorities, many of them. These include expansion of trail systems, connectivity to open space and wildlife viewing, affordable, specifically free recreation, close to home opportunities, encourages multimodal transportation, and prioritizes accessibility to recreation for all. The decision to deny variance 2401 has some financial implications for the city. The project is an Oregon State Park grant-funded project. The total project is anticipated to cost $1.2 million. The state parks have agreed to reimburse $467,550 of the project. The walking path, boardwalk, and viewing gazebo represent $350,000 of the total project cost. Removing that from the project will have a corresponding impact on the state parks grant. To date, the city has already expended $33,000 on design and permitting of these improvements to get to this point where we're at, as well as a significant amount of resources, staff resources on this process. On behalf of the Monmouth Public Works Department and numerous citizens who took part in the process of developing the 2020 Parks Master Plan, we thank you for your time tonight considering this application that's before you.
Any questions of the applicant? Councilor Carey.
Russ, you mentioned that this particular project is located on the southern end of this wetlands. How much of that do we own? How far does it extend to the north? I mean, round number, all the way to the way to Ash Creek?
The city's property does. There is a lagoon. The Henry Estate subdivision is the subdivision that's just to the north of Monmouth Recreation Park and Monmouth Elementary School. The wetland and open space area wraps around the north end of that and is in between. It basically serves as a buffer between the residential neighborhood and the city's sewage lagoons.
Right, right. Any idea of how much of that was filled in at another time? I mean, previously, it seems that some of that eastern end of that development may be built on fill. If I haven't been there in a while, but that was my recollection. So we've intruded maybe a bit already.
Yeah, I don't have a calculation of the amount, but that subdivision did represent some removal from the western part of the property and filled in order to expand the residential neighborhood to the east.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And that brings us to those who would like to speak in favor of this proposal of the, actually to approve the variance. And so I can't tell for sure. I've got a couple that say against for sure. And I wasn't. See, Vernon Smith, was this to speak in favor of the proposal to grant the variance? Okay, come on up. Thank you, sir, and your name and residence. Go ahead and press the little button right in the center of the base of the microphone. There you go. Thank you, sir.
My name is Vern Smith. I'm located at 1298 Laurie Lane. My concern is traffic. Putting traffic out in that wetlands.
Okay, this is for folks who are in favor of the variance.
No, I'm not in favor.
All right, thanks. It said approval and I wasn't sure, so I will have your testimony in a moment. Is there anyone who is here this evening to speak in favor? All right, thanks. Come on up.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm Dr. Erin Baumgartner. I reside at 1309 Emerson Lane East in Monmouth. I am a parent in this community. I'm also a professional biology educator who has devoted my life to promoting life sciences literacy in people of all ages. I was very excited to learn of the plans for the Wetlands Park Path at Monmouth Recreation Park. This is largely because, to paraphrase the great ecologist E.O. Wilson, we will not save what we do not love, and we cannot love what we do not understand. The opportunity for all community members to get out and enjoy nature and wildlife in this local area is an amazing opportunity. I value how inclusive our community is. Folks from the senior center, young children, individuals who are part of our Partners for Community Living community would all benefit from the accessibility of this park. My dad is an older adult with mobility issues. He's the person who taught me to love nature, and finding accessible locations for our family to get out and enjoy nature together has become more challenging. And so I would hate to see this opportunity not be available both to my family and to all the families in our community. So that is my testimony in support of the application. I doubt you have any questions for me, but thank you for the opportunity to share those thoughts.
Any questions at all for Dr. Baumgartner? All right, thank you. And I'm guessing none of these others were in favor, so I will go ahead. Mr. Smith, thanks for waiting. Come on up. Or are there any neutral testimony? Anybody who is neutral on this? Okay, Mr. Smith, come on up. Yeah. All right, thank you.
Again, I'm Vern Smith. I'm from 1298 Lori Lane. My concern about this whole thing is traffic. We sit in our house and watch the wildlife out in the backyard. We've seen deer and geese, snipe, pheasants, goldfinch, swallows, hummingbirds, mallards, redwings, blackbirds, coos, doves, starlings. I'm afraid that this much foot traffic is going to destroy all that. It won't be there anymore. And I'm concerned about the garbage that's going to be accumulated as that walkway takes place. That's my concern. So I'm really interested in the wildlife and want it to remain there. That's important to me. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Stephanie. Yeah, go ahead, come on up, and your name and residence for the record. Thank you.
Greetings, Mayor, City of the Council, or members of the council. I am Stephanie Kinzelak French. I live at 1307 Mickey Lane East. So for reference, where the boardwalk would propose to end is my residence. When I purchased this home 5 years ago, the main reason I picked this residence was for the privacy. And I was told nothing would ever be built back there. I am a very, very private person. And then just to find out that this might actually be built in my backyard. And I did attach pictures just to kind of show the layout of my backyard. It is up on the fill dirt. There would be no possible way to mitigate that loss of privacy. You could see entirely into the back of my home. I did actually move from a place that did have a lot of property crime. And so I know the intended use of the trail, and that's all good. But I know that it also attracts, misbehavior at times.
I would be more accepting of the alternative design. I do lose some property, but just to not have that next to my house would give me a great peace of mind. I just would urge you to consider if you do want the boardwalk, possibly going with the alternative design. So my neighbors directly next to me who are also in opposition, we won't all be losing the very thing that we purchased our homes for, which is the privacy. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. And Beth Dykstra?
My name is Beth Dykstra. I'm at 1297 Mickey in Monmouth. I have a couple of concerns that I wrote a couple of letters about this before. I'm sure you guys were able to read them. And so things are largely repeating from what I wrote before. But one of the issues is that the gazebo area, the walking path is not really a walking path. It's a way to access this viewing area. The viewing area is going to have a view of a sewage retention pond and people's back windows and backyards. This viewing area is going to be 225 feet from my back porch, which is not kind of uncomfortable, especially with the idea of emphasizing the ability to view wildlife, which means binoculars pointing at my backyard. And I'm the further of the three houses that are on Mickey that are immediately accessible and viewable. I mentioned before in letters that it would be more acceptable if there was some sort of barrier, visual barrier, physical barrier that could be in place between my house. I don't know if this is something that I'm supposed to have a sudden financial responsibility for to maintain my current level of privacy. I'm still concerned about the impact of the walking path to get to a walking path that is an access point for a remote, isolated, hard to monitor gazebo. I don't know what's, as Stephanie mentioned, what it might be going on at this wildlife viewing area gazebo as well. And I don't understand the point of having this. How does this, it's still the same issue that we mentioned before. What is this relieving in order to have this walking path? If it could be if the idea is a viewing area, the amount of view shed that's going to be visible from that area is very limited as far as what should be looked at by people, by lots of school children, by anybody who decides to walk on it. So anyway, that is my concern. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Beth. Did anyone have any questions for any of the speakers against? Yes, Councilor Salinas Oliveros.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did have a question because we did get some testimony about kids using kind of an alternative path from school to get to their house. And I'm trying to see it on the map. And I'm wondering if you've noticed, I'm thinking it's right kind of on the edge of the wetlands there.
Actually, when Stephanie mentioned a moment ago that the alternate is a little bit more acceptable, you can see where the path goes straight out from the end of from Margaret straight south. That basically is along the current path that's there, which is why it's a little bit more acceptable because it's not scoring a whole new walking path than
So
what's
it's the
already
one
there.
on the side there that's being used by school children to cross and so you don't hear as much of the disruption, or like, is that?
Stephanie,
Okay.
it will need you to come up
here?
and speak into the mic. If you
Yeah,
want to
sorry.
join her, I know you
I was
two
just
are-
curious because we
Is
had.
there anything else of me specifically? Because otherwise, Stephanie
No,
should
no,
be-
thank you. I was
course.
curious about that. Thank you, Beth.
There, the house across the street from me, the kids already cut through there, then that's already has plans to be cemented, wheelchair accessible, access to the dog park, access to all the park facilities. It's the little yellow one you can kind of see.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's a little yellow
So there
one.
is going to be a multi-purpose walking path that's basically already being used by all the school children cut
Okay,
through.
okay. And that hasn't been disruptive or is it?
No, because the school children have been using that the whole time.
Okay.
And would be no different to what I currently, have. But the design to put next to my house would be extremely violating to have it placed there.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Counselor Carey?
Just, well, and a question to that, yeah, that's fine. Sorry to keep. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Sorry.
I should have asked.
But to be clear, that closer to you, that other entrance would only be the width of the street. Is that correct? Because if the alternative design would come off the south of Margaret only, and that would make it safe rather than, sort of a sketchy path.
Yeah, they're not getting so.
That might be a question first. The applicant of the intent.
Well, but
So it's just not, so my, show where my house.
yeah, I'm familiar with the layout. I've
Yeah.
looked at the map. I'm just trying to decide, and
I would.
that would be less, you'd be
Not
okay
having
with that
path
one, the width of
continue
the
all the
street?
way into my, my sidewalk looking into the back of my house. Because if you're walking on the path, there's no way not to see into the back of my house. It's wide open. I don't have any trees or anything back there. They use that other trail, it's away from my house and it's already being used basically. Okay.
Counselor Belstead, do you have a comment or question? Yep, we will ask that of the applicant. Any other questions of the public? Counselor Ober.
So I'm just on absolutely clear, which property is yours? Is yours the one at the, okay, at the top
Yeah,
there? So
where the original design would,
So the thing you have problems with is the connection from the gazebo to Margaret.
yes.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, because that's just a straight shot to my house.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions I can answer?
Nope. Seeing none, counselors, well, can we just a moment? All right, thank you. We'll recall the applicant to the stand and offer an opportunity to either rebut comments or for additional questions. Now, it sounds like we have some questions about the map. Mr. Cooper?
How can I help?
Sort of just to dovetail on what we're talking to Stephanie on. Currently, there's an unimproved, unauthorized path coming off the end of Margaret, off the south sidewalk, that wraps around and then accesses to the whatever sidewalk is there or will be there.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to walk up and point on the map for
Well,
what currently is being used by
But I think that what's currently being used is what you're talking about replacing with a sidewalk.
with the paved pedestrian path, 8
Yeah.
foot wide. Correct. That is correct.
And part of that would impact would need to have some boardwalk.
Yeah, the small area identified in yellow as it wraps around the corner of that house is the area that impacts wetland that is part of the decision tonight. So most of that path does not impact wetland, just that small portion there.
Okay, I'm looking, just one more, Madam Mayor. I'm looking on page, I guess it's 86, which is on the sort of the original design of the boardwalk. And, that shows the pathway boardwalk out to the gazebo, and that gazebo is on solid ground. Is that correct?
It is outside of the wetland area of impact, correct?
And so it's on, and the path that's represented there that works back to the west is also on solid ground. In other words, there's a little island out there of some sort.
Yeah, majority of it is not impacting the wetland. There is that small sliver as you get closer to Margaret that does impact wetland.
And on the modified design, I didn't see anything that would restrict any movement from the gazebo to the west on solid ground.
So the restricting nature will take place in two ways. One is we'll have signs that encourage users to stay on the boardwalk. The second is that the boardwalk is an elevated surface that, sure, somebody can get off of that, but people can access that area right now, whether the boardwalk is out there or not. So the kind of the limiting factors are signage, public education, and the design being a raised boardwalk, clearly delineating where they should and should not be.
The original plan has roughly a 30-foot boardwalk that connects sort of the island, if you will, with the area just off the east end of Margaret.
I'm tracking your question. That entire path will be boardwalk from the south up to the viewing gazebo and to the west to Margaret Well, where it will transition to the asphalt path at Margaret or to the sidewalk. So all of that will be raised boardwalk, even the portion through what is not wetland impact.
I see. Okay.
Thank you for that question. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, that's fine. And then, is there a reason that portion ties into the north side, the north sidewalk of Margaret? I mean, could it not just like snake around and, tie into the south sidewalk? I mean, if we've got a concern about people walking that north sidewalk on the east end of Margaret.
Right. The current design is intended to minimize the impact to the wetland. And so that's why it is pushed to the north. That's the shortest distance to get across that area of wetland. If you see the area that's inside the line that has the three-bladed grass, that is the wetland area. And so if we move that down to the south edge of Margaret, will either increase the amount of wetland impact or maybe not really address the concerns that you have been brought before you about the current design.
If you've got the boardwalk now headed west, couldn't it just take a 90-degree turn and go south and connect in with, allow access in and out of the south?
It absolutely could, yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor McKeel?
Thank you for being here, Mr. Cooper. I'm concerned, my concern is with your comment about pedestrian connectivity, particularly in light of the pathway that the school kids are finding south. And that if we have a gazebo to the east of Margaret, without that boardwalk going there, do you anticipate that there would be a pathway that is made just from Margaret to the gazebo? So having a boardwalk would actually, I'm assuming what you're the reason we need, there's a question in here, but it's having a very difficult time coming out of my brain. I'm assuming the reason you need that north boardwalk that goes from the gazebo to Margaret is because without it, there would be a lot of foot traffic across the wetland that would be more destructive than having a boardwalk. Because the revised plan has no boardwalk there.
Correct, correct. So the plan provides that connectivity, or what is referred to as looping. The consultant, even in the Parks Master Plan, they state whether or not there is a neighborhood connection for the proposed boardwalk and gazebo, the interpretive trail should be designed to provide a loop experience. That includes the observation gazebo. The trail should have two connections within the park along its proposed paved pathway and two approaches to the gazebo. It just allows for an experience of moving through the park instead of a walk out, walk back. So that is really the purpose of having 2 points of connection. Having just a single point does not, I don't know that necessarily encourages people freelancing across the wetland. I'm not sure that it'll do that. I do know that the presence of the boardwalk will encourage the use of it. It's a directive type of a facility that puts people, acknowledges where they should be walking.
Just add one more. Could you also, when you were collecting data from residents in Monmouth about what kind of walkability that they wanted, did you see additional data about ADA? I know that we had some letters from people that said, I'm in a wheelchair and this is the way that I will be able to more holistically use the park. Did you also get that a concern when you were meeting with the public at the meetings?
Yeah, there was. There's even a question that asks why residents, I'm looking for it here, but one of them is why they don't go to the parks. And one of them, about a little less than 10% of the respondents said because of my physical abilities to access the park, meaning disabilities or ability to traverse on uneven ground.
I'm sorry, I lied. Well, and it's like, as soon as I say I'm done, that's when I just keep talking. And so that boardwalk across the top then is that consideration for people that need wheelchair to get that looping. Otherwise, if you have a wheelchair, right, you would have to like only come in from the south, go up to north, come back, and you wouldn't get that loop. Because there wouldn't be any ADA thing there?
A person in a wheelchair can move out to the gazebo and turn around and come back on the same path. The experience will be different if they do the loop. All of the paths that are being designed and constructed in this project meet ADA accessibility standards, and so are intended to make the parks more usable for folks with disabilities.
And I just have to tell you, my grandson was in Madrona Park today and told me he did the loop, and he's coming from Texas, in 2 minutes and 22 seconds and challenged me to beat him, in which I didn't take him up on that.
Well, I thank
So
you
the
for
loops are
mentioning
good.
Madrona Park, because Madrona Park is a similar park that provides opportunities for improved walking paths and is used heavily.
And also, I believe, is a wetland area.
And has wetlands involved in there,
Yes, it
correct.
does. Any other questions? Yes, Councilor Selena Silver.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I may need assistance from Councilor Carey. You mentioned that this could possibly loop away from the north side and come back to the south. Is that correct? And would that not impact or create any more impact on the wetlands? Is that kind of what you were saying, to move them?
I'd be happy to.
My reference was, if there is concern by residents that coming off of that boardwalk on the north, going to the west, and then being able to go shoot straight out onto the north sidewalk, if it would be better, less impactful to them, if instead of having two pathways to Margaret, you could just sort of make a 90-degree turn down, go the width of the street, probably 28 feet, and then go right out perhaps an improved egress in and out of the park. was my thought. Rather than having two accessing both sides, would it be better if we could access just one side of that street?
Madam Mayor, if I may, this is a hearing on an application. It's not a process of
Problem
design.
solving.
Yeah. You've got an application to either approve or disapprove.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Additional questions? All right. Thank you, Russ. And that brings us back to city staff to summarize and respond. So Carter, from our planning department.
Do you want to enter in the additional testimony to the record? I think would be one of the points. Yeah.
So after we published the staff report last week, we received some additional testimony. I'm going to read that into the record now. So beginning with sorry.
Yeah, so you don't need to read the whole, I think just summarize, yeah, how many letters we received is great.
That's great.
Sorry.
That's good news for Carter. We received.
We have copies of all of them. So.
Yes, we received two letters in opposition and four letters in support, citing some of the reasons we've discussed here in opposition relating to increased traffic, safety, privacy, and in not support increased connectivity.
Any additional discussion about any of the questions we've asked or any?
Nope.
Okay. Any further questions from staff regarding the planning portion of this? All right, there being no further, do you have something?
Based on what Lane had said, I realize that we're going to be addressing this one way or the other. If we allow the variance, is there opportunity for further discussion about what Councilor Carey was discussing, or does it become a done deal?
It would take another application to approve a different design. Because that would require then the analysis and findings. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Carey.
I believe I read on the staff report that we could either vote this up or down or suggest amendments to it. And they wouldn't necessarily be substantive, but now, and that may have been erroneous. You're not liking it, I can see.
Yeah, the hearing here is on the application and really should not be getting into designing a plan on the fly. Again, because the approval has to be supported by the criteria that requires analysis. And we don't have that for anything other than the application and the alternative that's been presented.
And you're okay with the alternative?
That has been analyzed and the staff report says that it meets the criteria. Yeah.
Councilor McKeel.
So I'm looking at the motion and there's A and B. A is the original that has the connection across the north part that goes from Margaret to the gazebo. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I'm ready. I move, nope, oh, sorry.
All right. So, no further questions. I will close the hearing and then we will take this opportunity to, do you want to read the rest of the that they have additional
Yeah,
opportunities.
I think we're going to assume that the applicant doesn't want to leave the record open, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, I think we can go ahead to, directly to deliberation.
All right. In fact, that's what we'll do then. So the hearing is closed and we are able to deliberate. Often we do that with a motion first. So I would entertain a motion. And again, at this point, if we during deliberation have additional questions for staff, we can ask those, but not any of the other participants.
I move to approve variance 24-01 as presented in the staff report, including the findings of fact found in June 18, 2024 and March 20th, 2024 staff reports.
I would second that.
Thank you, Councilor McKeel for the motion and Councilor Oberst for the second. And discussion. Councilor Oberst, sorry.
So, having been chair of planning long ago, I had an assumption that you couldn't build on wetlands. And I asked our then planner, Mark Fancy, about that. And his answer to me was that you can build anywhere if you're willing to pay enough to remediate. And the truth of this particular project is the total amount of remediation required is a little bit bigger than the footprint of my house, but not a lot. It's about 2,400 square feet, and the city has committed to remediating that wetland. And so while, you know, we're going to be going into wetlands, we're going to be paying to recover wetlands in another spot to make up that difference. And boardwalks like this are going in all over the place in wetlands. If you go to Ankeny Wildlife Refuge, they've got a lot of boardwalk in wetlands. And this is the folks who first made us pay attention to wetlands, the federal government, and a piece of property they own, and they have put in boardwalks through that wetland. And the primary reason for that is to get people out into nature and seeing the wildlife that they have a chance to interact with that is there in the wildlife refuge. I've been to that particular boardwalk, and it's amazing how much wildlife you see from that one. The timing and construction of this thing, we're not digging holes and pouring concrete. We've got stainless steel screws that screw into the ground to support the thing. And it's not going to be hugely disruptive of the soil structure or the vegetation there to install this thing. So another reason that I would be supportive of it is the way it's being built. And when I look at the original, and I look at the staff report, it's here too, the reasons to allow the variance, and we meet, I think, a couple of those, but the biggest one, of course, is that the property has been rendered not buildable effectively, unless we wanted to do what that entire neighborhood did and seek a massive fill removal permit and fill the whole thing and extend the neighborhood into that area. So I don't see that as a good solution. And when I look at this solution as a way to make this piece of city property useful to the residents of this city, and that's the bottom line for this body, is we've got to pay attention to everybody in town. And we've got a whole lot of folks who have stated in our process about the Parks Master Plan that they'd really like to see a little bit more by way of trails and a little bit more by way of wildlife opportunities. And I believe that this is going to provide that. Just two quick little short stories. One was I was talking to Don Patton, the head of MindNet at the time, on the phone, and he interrupted himself in mid-sentence with a, wow. And I said, what? He said, a bald eagle just landed on the fence outside my window. So, you know, there's a guy with 5 feet away a fence, and he's got a bald eagle landing. I was with Mayor Kuntz and Councilor Carey. We were interviewing a candidate for, I think it was the planning committee, might have been budget. At any rate, Out of that area come a mother and a couple of, and this was late fall, so it's a couple of fawns. One of them walked right up to the window and looked in at us. We had the lights on, it was dark out. These animals have become acclimated to being around humans, and I think the light traffic we'll have during the day, because I don't see this being hugely used. It will be used, but it's not going to be hundreds and hundreds of people a day. There will be a trickle of folks going out, using that gazebo to view the wildlife, and that's why it's there. It sees a whole lot more than just the sewage lagoons and the houses there. There's a lot to see out in that area. And I'm looking forward to that opportunity as somebody who lives in the neighborhood to have that connectivity and that loop path, because a one-way path out to that gazebo will not be used. I would really like to say, or it won't be used as much. Having a loop is important. So with all that said, Councilor McKeel, I support your motion on this, because I believe the best solution for the residents of the city is to have that loop path and that gazebo and that recreational opportunity on a piece of land that the city owns that is designated for recreation. And, you know, getting folks out there to see the wonders that we see, because we're a rural community right on the edge of wider nature in the countryside. And those animals do come in. We see cougar tracks sometimes really close to town, which I'd rather not see down there, but we see all kinds of wildlife right around the edge of town. And I'm looking forward to an opportunity to go and enjoy that as well.
Thank you, Councilor Obers. Councilor McKeel?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am also excited about the boardwalk, and I think Dr. Baumgartner, sorry. I'm going to try it again to try to say it right. Sorry. But I really appreciated her statement about we will protect what I'm going to blow that one too. Anyway, it's really good for us to get out and see what you can see from a boardwalk into the wetlands. And then having the educational science that Mr. Cooper was talking about, that will really get us to appreciate what we have, so we don't continue to go the wrong direction and abuse often what we have. I do appreciate, however, the difficulty of where that northern path goes, the boardwalk, but looking at that map, I think we're just stuck. And Mr. Cooper did a nice job with the design, because while it's really good to have a boardwalk so that we connect with the wetland and the nature that's there, to move that path south to avoid that is actually going to use up more wetland. And while it's good that we do it, it's probably also good to use up less of it. And that little portion where it comes out from Margaret, what it looked like about 30 feet or so, is a lot less than cutting it south, where it'd be more like around 60 feet. So it's a nice job with the plan on that, but I think that, we get the best of everything. In an inconvenient situation, I think, for some people, but I think we have to look at the people who are going to be able to use that with wheelchairs and strollers and kids that will be going out to the gazebo. My grandson, who will do the loop. Sorry, I had to bring my grandson into it again.
Any other comments? Councilor Carey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When the Planning Commission talks, we generally listen. They are a considered body, and they are guided well by Suzanne and the leadership of Stephen. This was a split decision. This was 4-4. And on one motion, and then on the other motion, it passed 5-3, and that was to reject. So it was not a resounding, everybody's behind this. We're all in agreement on this. So that was largely the reason that I, and I think probably the rest of us, were interested in calling this up or listening to an appeal. having done that and understanding that there are really, and we've heard a lot of testimony, heartfelt and appropriate, but perhaps missing the mark on the criteria that is used to grant a variance. And one is, as Councilor Oberst and others have mentioned, the land is not buildable. It's a wetland. The applicant has exhausted the other options to relieve the hardship. Well, the best way to relieve the hardship completely is just not build it. But that's not in our plan, and that's not in the parks master plan vision is not the best use. This was designed and approved in the master plan with considerable thought, expertise, and consideration. The variance is the minimum necessary to afford the relief. The impact here is really limited in terms of the construction style, the aluminum screws, tight, whatever they are, the boardwalk above the space, and the installation and construction is well considered. And there are and nobody's raised this, that there are significant impacts on water quality, erosion, slope stability, et cetera. This is all that, any of that has been mitigated to the greatest extent possible. And the fifth one is the loss of vegetation coverage is minimal. And actually, it sounds like we're going to be replanting native plants and perhaps pulling some non-native plants. So, in my opinion, the applicant has met the approval criteria. It supports the parks master plan. It supports and this is an important one, and we've touched on it, but it supports our DEI value, and particularly the inclusion value, where our facilities would be inclusive to all. The ADA compliance throughout this project is essential, wouldn't pass without it. So with the disability community we have, the older residents, I think this opens up an opportunity, and it's an embracement and embraces their presence. It provides I agree with Dr. Baumgartner, the experiential educational opportunities to appreciate wetlands, and it promotes walking, bird watching, other activities. We've talked about ad nauseum about connectivity and pedestrian friendly. This checks that box as well. So, and I would commend the Public Works Department and the people that helped them design this for the entire project. Now, this as well, but that entire project, a lot going on down there, and it's going to be very nice and very usable. So congratulations.
Thank you, Councilor Carey. Anything else? Yeah, it's difficult when we have a list of criteria we have to meet, and nowhere in Oregon land use planning law does it say anything about the testimony, as you say, heartfelt, that we hear, and that's difficult for us. Our decisions are
Fine. Motion passes 5-0.
all right. Thank you. So we will direct staff to prepare an order memorializing this decision, and thank you everyone for coming out tonight to be a part of this, and we will move forward on that. All right, that takes us to our next order of business, which is to consider some agreement modifications regarding our recent decisions to change how our court services work. And Susie Marston, our finance director, presenting. Thank you, Susie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and councilors. Susie Marston, Finance Director for the city. Tonight, I am presenting on behalf of our interim city manager a modification to our city attorney agreement. As we've been talking to the council about, we're transitioning criminal cases from our municipal court, which won't require us to have our prosecuting attorney provide services at the level he currently is. And right now, how that is, it's currently provided through the city attorney's agreement, where the city pays a retainer as part of that agreement. So what we're recommending is separating out those services, modify the city attorney agreement, and then contract directly with the prosecutor, which is the next agenda item. So this modification removes the obligation for the provision of the prosecution services and also removes the corresponding retainer that the city pays for that. And that's it. With that,
Any questions? Councilor Salinas Oliveros and Councilor Carey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to state that this was something that was recommended during our adopted budget. So this isn't new information.
Right.
This is really to cement this decision, but this is in the budget for the following year. Is that correct?
correct, yes.
As I read both of these, I was a little confused on what's been happening. I mean, we're going to modify Lane because we're shifting to Polk County. We've been using Mo Brown.
Right.
What's the relationship there? And
Want me
maybe
to
that's
answer
a
that?
Lane question.
You want?
Yeah, sure, I'm happy to answer that. Mo is I subcontract to Mo. So I nominally supervise him, but he really has been working independently for several years, doing such a great job. So what happens is the city pays a retainer. I use that, I just pay that, basically turn it over to Mo. And now that we won't be doing the criminal prosecution services, you don't need to pay me that retainer. I don't need to pay it to Mo. And it really will be simpler for the city just to contract with him directly, kind of split up our services. So Mo will have responsibility for whatever limited services may be necessary in the future, just on an hourly basis in city court. And then I'll just continue the regular general advice to the city as I've done, not on a retainer basis, but just on an hourly fee.
Seeing no other questions.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to authorize the interim city manager to enter into a modification of the city attorney agreement with city attorney Lane P. Shetterly.
Second. Thank you, Councilor McKeel for the motion and Councilor Belts for the second. And seeing no other questions, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed, seeing none, that moves us to Part B, which I think she's already explained.
Okay, so this next item is the personal services agreement between the city and our current prosecutor, Mo Brown, to provide those same services at a reduced level. As Lane explained, we still do plan to use him as we transition the cases that we have. We need to wind those down. But also there might be a need during our regular municipal court where we may need his services. So what this contract does is he will be paid on an hourly basis, $125 an hour. 2-hour minimum for appearing in person. He would have the option to appear over video. That does not count drive time. And it also, there's a provision in here where it allows the city manager to meet with him annually. They can review the previous year's services and, evaluate that way. So our recommendation is to authorize the interim city manager to enter into this agreement.
I would move to authorize the interim city manager to enter into a personal services agreement with city prosecution attorney Mo Lawrence A. Brown.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Obers for the motion and Counselor Salinas Oliveros for the second. Any discussion or questions? Okay, go
I
ahead.
just want to, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to thank Lane Shutterly for your explanation. It was awesome, very clear. Thank you.
Seeing nothing else, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed, none? All right. And thank you very much, Susie. Thank you. Apparently, we have you coming back here shortly, but first of all, Kevin Perkins. A potential amendment to our ordinance.
Evening, Mayor and Council. The ordinance presented before you is to delegate a subset of the parking authority from council to the city manager. It only pertains to items K, L, M, O, and P of the code that's referenced in the packet. The intent with this is to make it a little bit more efficient to adjust small parking matters. So as noted in the staff report, the two specific incidents that we're talking about is adjusting the parking out in front of City Hall to allow a wider approach for the trolley, adding the space where we closed the alleyway, and then also imposing some reasonable restrictions in city parking lots at facilities so that folks can count on being here and conducting business during business hours, but that we also don't get over restrictive during non-business hours. So what the ordinance does is it authorizes council to make that delegation, and then the accompanying resolution would make the delegation itself. It does not set up a specific process just yet for how the city manager will make those decisions, and that's something that would come through the future city manager.
All right, questions before we conduct first reading? Counselor McKeel and Counselor Carey.
So I saw in the report that there was concern that there was parking in the parking lot just south of here in off hours. Is delegating this to the city manager, are we going to say like, don't park here 24/7, or what was the intention of that?
No, the intent with that is to limit it to only restricting during business hours so that when we have a direct business need for that parking, but on off hours, it can be used for folks coming down to restaurants or things like that. We have a bit of an issue with people using our parking lots as long-term storage for extra vehicles, and that's just not appropriate. So my idea then is to limit City Hall's parking lot to only city business between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. during the week. The senior center will probably be a little bit more restricted because they do have so many events on off hours. But also for the library to match restrictions to that, because there has been an issue with the parking lot getting a little bit crowded and a little bit clogged on an ongoing basis. I don't think we probably have the authority and ability to restrict all overnight use based on state law and things like that. So I think restricting it to business hours is the and again, this is outside of this ordinance, but that was the goal, was to meet our business needs without compromising our or I should say violating state law.
Counselor Carey.
I wondered about the particular items, the bullets that you pointed out there, you know, the K, L, M, O, and P. Some of those, I mean, some of those could change, you know, all of a sudden it becomes a no parking, or it is no longer a no parking. And some of these seem to be something that might need to have a little more consideration. Why did you select those particular ones, or why were those included?
I'll defer a little bit to Lane because he helped me develop this. But the primary thing about keeping it restricted from my aspect was we didn't want to cede the entire set of parking authority to the city manager. That's just not appropriate. So these were the least necessary number of provisions that at least in the way I saw it.
And also the provisions that are included in the authority to delegate are the provisions of the code where the city council has discretion. If you look at, it's hard to read on this, F, for instance, no parking within 10 feet of our fire hydrant. That's self-executing, but all of the rest of these where that you would be delegating are ones where the city council has authority to exercise some discretion. Of course, by delegating, it doesn't mean that you are surrendering it. So you will always have the authority to call the city manager before you and direct the city manager to do something different than what the city manager has done. So this is not a surrender of authority. It's really, I think probably, if I can channel Kevin, more for administrative purposes and to allow a little bit more maybe fine tuning that might be easy to, would be easy to do in a resolution based kind of regulation by the council on a parking lot by parking lot or area by area kind of basis.
Yeah, I don't think any of us are looking for more things to do relative to parking. I mean, we sort of blanch when it comes to add a stop sign or not. Mm-hmm. So in many ways, I applaud this, but I thought there might have been a couple that were a little more than we needed. But then final question, what is a parking district? You said it didn't.
So I lived for about 20 years in Corvallis, and we had 7 or 8 different parking districts. So in many instances, it's a district set in a residential area where you have to have a permit to park there more than, say, 2 hours or so. And that is set by city councils and things like that. So it's a significantly restricted parking area for non-residents is essentially what it is. In Corvallis, it's to discourage folks from parking there who are on their way to the university typically. I don't know that there's been any discussion, but they can be very controversial. So that's something that should be heard and established by the council, not by staff.
I move to conduct the first reading of ordinance 1414.
All right. This is the first reading of ordinance 1414, an ordinance amending Monmouth City Code section 10.10.010 relating to parking regulations. We'll come back for a second reading and adoption. Thank you. Board and commissions, Phyllis Bowman.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. You have before you the list of people on our boards and commissions who are requesting reappointment this year, the people who are not, and then one that wishes to be appointed to the Arts and Culture Commission. I need to point out that I had omitted Marcus Axford, who wishes to be reappointed to the Historic Commission. And so staff recommends that you make the appointments, the reappointments, and we have a letter for the people who do not wish to be reappointed.
Go ahead. And again, just by our chosen process, we have instituted a process where applicants for budget and planning go through a more extensive process before appointment or reappointment. Those folks are interviewed by a subset, non-quorum of the council and recommended to the council at large. These are folks on our other boards and commissions that typically we just review their applications, either for reappointment or appointment.
Phyllis, I thank you for this. The I have a question about the new applicant for arts and culture. Erasmo Cortez. I didn't get any connection to our community on that. He lives in Woodburn.
He's a student at Western Oregon, an art student.
So so that's his connection.
That's his
And that would have been
connection.
nice to have that included.
Okay,
Because,
you didn't put that on the
no,
application.
because, normally when we go outside
Mm-hmm.
of, we allow that one person outside of a non-resident, for example.
Right.
You think Independence, you think Dallas, you think PED, whatever. And Western students are more than welcome,
Mhm.
as far as I'm concerned. So given that, that allays my concern.
I also want to point out before you make the motion that we do have 2 openings on the Arts and Culture Commission, 1 on Park and Rec and 2 on the Senior Advisory Board currently.
Motion, anyone?
Yes. I move to reappoint the listed applicants to their respective boards and commissions, with the exception of none, and to make a new appointment of Erasmo Cortez to the Arts and Culture Commission.
Oh, second.
And Councillor Salinas Oliveros, would you be interested in an amendment to your motion to include Marcus Axford, who is not on the list?
Yes, I include an amendment for Marcus, what's his last name?
Axford.
Axford, who is not on the list.
I'll second that amendment.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Great.
Thank you.
Hearing none. Thanks so much, Phyllis, for wrangling that process for us once again. And Susie to talk about the year-end budget transfers, a process all of us are going through this time of year as public finance directors.
Thank you, Mayor, fellow council members. Susie Marston again, City Finance Director. I am presenting to you resolution number 1994, a resolution that will the budget transfers for fiscal year 23-24, and directing me as the finance director to make the appropriate entries. This is a process that happens every year. I think you're all familiar with it. Budget law allows us to make these budget transfers to keep the city in compliance with budget law. We did have some unexpected costs come up during the year, which we've talked about throughout the year in the general fund, included higher than expected insurance costs, outside contracts for city hall maintenance agreements. That includes janitorial, elevator monitoring, fire monitoring, things like that. The city manager recruitment, some extra personnel costs in the PD due to transitions and unexpected vehicle maintenance. And also, I wanted to make a transfer to allow for extra appropriation for the senior center lighting. We did receive the donation from the Friends, but we needed to boost that appropriation up a little bit. In the storm fund, I have also got a transfer. We had some professional service costs that are being used to help update our TMDL plan as required by DEQ. They put some extra requirements on us for mitigation provisions. And we also had unexpected costs with our sweeper repairs. And then also with the gas fund, gas prices didn't fare like we projected when last year's budget was proposed. So our recommendation is for the council to adopt this resolution to make these budget transfers for fiscal year 23-24.
I move adoption of resolution number 1994, a resolution approving transfers for the fiscal year 2023 to 2024 and directing the finance director to make appropriate entries.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor McKeel for the motion and Counselor Salinas Oliveros for the second. And again, Susie, thank you. We are well aware of these. They've come up as we've discussed throughout the year, throughout the budget process. As you say, it's none of the expenditures are a surprise, and pulling from our contingencies to the direct line areas where they were expended from is perfectly reasonable and legal. So thank you for that.
If I can, I would like to add to that. These were based on my check of the financials just a week and a half ago, and we're not overspent yet in these areas, but it's close, and these will just give us that safety net. So there's probability that we may not go over those, which will be good, but I guess a plug for staff too. We've really been doing, or everybody's been doing a really good job of being mindful of savings we need to be taking, and we're going to be okay. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, seeing no questions. This is a resolution, so I will ask Phyllis for the roll call, please.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros,
Aye.
Counselor McKeel,
Yes.
Counselor Belts,
Yes.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor Oberst.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Perfect, thank you. And ARPA.
Okay, so I am back to ask for a revision of our ARPA spending plan. As you remember, council approved a revised spending plan in February 2024, which left $100,000 for gas tank replacement at Public Works along with software replacement. Since that plan has been revised, we got the bid back for the fuel tank, and the cost came back at about $178,000. No surprise. So what staff is recommending is to move $100,000 from I'm on page 140, move $100,000 from the source water development allocation up to the category that includes the fuel tanks. So that would give that category $201,000, reducing source water to rounding up $314,000. The fuel tank would use 178, and the remainder of that would be room to afford software, upgrading the software that goes with that tank. An alternative would be, rather than move it from source water, take it out of the business marketing and resiliency line item, leaving that at $98,000. Our recommendation is to take it out of the source water. Our reserves in the water fund are healthy enough that we feel it could absorb that extra $100,000 that would otherwise be recognized as revenue.
Okay. And I have a question for Suzanne. The business resiliency, we have announced and received applications and are processing $100,000 of
That is correct. Yep. And we've actually to date, thank you for asking that question. I have my numbers in front of me here. We've made 11 grants, spending all but roughly 6,000 of it. And then we just got another application this week for that last 6,000 of it. So yeah, it's out the door. We've had folks already turning in their paid invoices. So the work is underway for those. So yes, that was 100,000 that we wanted to hold back some just in case there were some, potential changes made to that.
So it wasn't hugely oversubscribed. We
were not able to, so we lowered the award amount. Initially, we were thinking that we would do up to $20,000, and we were hoping to spread the funds out and help more businesses. So we did lower it to a $10,000 maximum. We had several grantees request, like they were doing big projects, like the tenant improvement at Monmouth Commons was one of the applicants to finish that space. And, you know, making $200,000 worth of improvements to that building to finish that space. And they had, you know, were happy, very happy to get the 10,000, but we did have other, you know, projects that could have used additional funds for that. So, you know, I think there's always additional need. It's just trying to make sure that there's opportunities for multiple businesses to participate and benefit from that.
Great, thank you, Councilor Obers.
So fuel tanks are important, so source water. And this may be a question for Russ. Can we use water SDC money on the source water projects? Being as some of it's drilling new holes in the ground. Just wondering.
It depends on what's on the master plan.
Hang at you to decide if you want him to come up, Susie.
Well, as a general answer, SDCs can be used to expand capacity. That's your
Capacity,
yeah.
yeah.
That's your general answer on SDCs. I'm not sure about the specifics of the project.
Right. That was basically the answer that I was going to come to the table with. For projects that expand source water capacity.
If they're on the capital
On the
improvement
capital
plan.
improvement
Yeah.
list. Yeah.
Councilor Carey.
What more do we have to do on the source water development? I'm looking at where our, you know, we're 300 and, I mean, we got 313,000 to spend yet. Does that include the 100,000 that's that's being proposed to be removed, Susie?
Yes, that is taking off the
Okay.
100,000, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, in the CIP, those dollars were allocated for completing the Marion County improvement project, which is, you know, to Councilor Ober's prior question, is not capacity developing. So the funds that will be used for that work will be out of our water fund. If you recall, as we went through the rate adjusting process here at the last meeting, the water fund had I don't want to say, they had acceptable reserves. And so we will draw down some of the 100,000 will in effect draw down some of that reserve.
Okay, that's what I anticipated, and thank you, Suzanne, for reminding us about the you know, the business marketing and resilience. You know, I'm pretty bullish on protecting and assisting our businesses where we can, and there probably aren't other options for that. Whereas, you know, that there could be, and I'm a rate hawk, so y'all know that, but I'm sort of inclined to protect our business resilience stuff just because there isn't another source for that.
Yeah.
I move to approve the use of the ARPA funds as revised.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor McKeel for the motion and Councilor Sneers Oliveris for the second. Any other comments? All right, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And any opposed? Hearing none, go forth and move things around on the line items. And
Thank you.
we'll continue to hold out then for that, for the additional support for our businesses, for all the things they're doing and have been going through. Thank you. All righty, and that takes us to our work session on our climate action plan. And I know we have folks here waiting, but we've had a couple of hours, and I'm going to suggest, can we take a quick 10-minute break before we resume? All right, thanks. Thanks, everyone, for your patience. We're going to take a couple minutes. Yeah. All right, we are ready to reconvene when our recorder comes back up here. And our pro tem city manager comes back to her seat. All right, city recorder, come back to record. And at this time, we will ask Wade Carey to come on up. Wade is our director of our Power and Light Department, and that department was tasked with one of our council goals, and that is discussing a climate action plan. And we're looking forward to report information only. So much more action to come. So climate information report at the moment. So thank you, Wade.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. How come my voice is so loud? And members of the City Council. You've all hopefully had a chance to review my staff report. When we met for the council goal setting a few months back, and we discussed where to go with creating a climate action plan, I kind of left that meeting and said, I have an idea of what I'm going to do. And as with most things I do, that changed a number of times. The process to get where I'm at today, I went around Oregon and I looked for other cities that had published climate action plans. And I had 10 or 11 of them to look at. And I started going through them and thinking about how I was going to present some of this information to you. And one thing became apparent is how different they all are. And they all had some things that we did not have yet. And that was actual goals. Having a goal for having a climate action plan is great, but that is just the very first step. The biggest question is, what do we want our plan to achieve? And how do we come up with those goals? And so, when I was looking at the different plans, it was amazing to me how similarly they were, similar content they had, but how specific the content was to the city, each city. And some plans were 28 pages. There was one that was just 28 pages. And there was one plan that was close to 250 pages. And it did not go with the size of the city, because one of the bigger cities' plan was only 28 pages, and one of the smaller cities was the 250. And so I really got to thinking about, how are we going to craft this, and what is it we need to achieve, and who do we want at the table, and all of that, and what's the plan going to look like? And so in my staff report, I kind of gave an outline of the components of a climate action plan, but we need to figure out how we get to the end product. And so what I would like to do is just talk about, what are we going to do next? There's some proposed next steps in there. At the goal setting at the council retreat, we did talk about the probable need to hire a consultant to help craft this. I by no means am a writer or a graphic designer, and so having some extra help for that, I think, would be a huge benefit. Some of these plans were extremely well crafted, with a lot of input and a lot of information. Some of the information, some of the measures and things that they wanted to do, initiatives, were very simple. Some of them were extremely complex. Some of them were inexpensive. Some of them were very expensive. We don't even know right now how much money we want to spend on initiatives. How do we set a budget, and those kinds of things? So I think the first thing we need to do is to start looking at an RFP to find a consultant that can help us craft some of these things. After that, we really need to think about who do we want at the table. I know some of the folks from the Monmouth Independence Climate Action Group are here, so which is great to see. Thank you. And they've given a list to me. I've seen it. It's quite diverse. And again, it's some easy things, some expensive things. A lot of what is in their list, it was in the plans of other cities, but not everything. They all centered around the same types of categories, you know, buildings and energy, transportation, urban land use, codes. Some of them had, I mean, even to the smallest things of when cities are buying food, are they buying climate-friendly food? And how do you go about doing that? So I actually thought about printing out the plans and bringing them here, but I did not want to go through 3 reams of paper because that kind of seemed to go against what we're trying to do. But I do have them, and I could email them out if you were interested. Another thing I think would be really helpful would be to actually form a board or commission for this. I don't know that it would need to be a permanent standing board or commission like we have now for some of our others, but definitely something that we could put in place, invite different stakeholders from the community to have input. We certainly don't want to have just one viewpoint. We need to have a wide viewpoint because some of these measures will have wide implications as far as cost to the city, impact on some of the services that the city has to offer and things of that nature. And so, you know, there's kind of all of that mixed into this big question mark of, we kind of know, you know, we want to have a report in our hand, but we're a long way from having that. And so I included a sample timeline. I don't know if that's super realistic or not. It's just kind of some stuff I came up with and seen online and things of that nature. But I think getting an RFP out, getting a consultant here and then that consultant can help us form our framework, our commission, and then help us with how we recruit for the commission and those kinds of things would really be helpful. It's really funny because climate action plans and climate change, and it's everywhere. It's everywhere we see. And I took a trip down to California this last weekend, and partly why my voice sounds so strange. I went to the Dodger game for Father's Day with my son, and so, but on the way down, I passed Lake Shasta, and I've been making this trip up and down the you know, I-5 for a lot of years, and for years Lake Shasta was completely empty. Now it's full. I mean, it's pretty remarkable to see, and a lot of the reservoirs in California are full. However, it took so much rain to do that. Now California's complaining about flooding. We get just down to LA, and there had just been a wildfire that had started just like an hour before we got to it. And that night I was reading the news about the start and everything, and they were saying that for years Californians had complained that everything was too dry and it was burning. Well, now the rain made everything grow, and now they have too much fuel on the hills, so now everything's burning. So it's just weird how all of this is impactful, and we want to make sure that whatever we come up with is very thorough and very clear, where we have clear set goals. You know, even as something as simple as saying, let's do a greenhouse inventory, figuring out what our footprint is, and making a goal to reduce that by 20% in the next 10 years or something like that. But what we don't want to do is just say, make a list of the things we want to do and have no way to measure how impactful they were. Otherwise, people are going to say, well, you did this and that's great, but now we've got this over here. So I know there's some information here. It's kind of vague. A lot of it is just general in nature, but I hope it gave you the idea of all the different things that actually go into one of these. And again, we could make it a 28-page report, or we could make it a 250-page report. So, but that's going to require city staff. It's going to require some of the folks on the council to be part of, and then a really diverse set of stakeholders from the community to help us craft this. So I think the next steps would be to come up with the RFP, let that be reviewed, and then go from there.
Thank you for your work on that, Wade, because you're right. It's been a goal, and what's that first step? So that we get to everything else. So appreciate very much your taking this on. Questions or comments?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Do you have a sense of how much a consultant would cost us with this tight budget that we have? I don't think that was put into the next year's budget, was it?
There was money. Christy, interim city manager Christy Worcester did include money in the budget for a consultant for this.
Okay.
Although I'm not certain exactly how much that is. Okay, we will get that for you. You know, I'm sure it's one of those things where we're going to get what we pay for. And then part of that will be, what's this RFP going to look like? So when we get to that point, I expect to come back to you with the contents of that RFP before we send it out, just so that we're all aware of what it is we're asking to do.
Can I ask a question? We have the climate group here. Have you looked at what other cities have done? So you have other documents, so you have a sense of, so it wouldn't help you at all to have what Wade found.
You can come up with it.
And if you'll introduce yourself as Stephen
Sure.
Howard.
Stephen Howard, 744 Martin Way, and one of the members of the climate group here between Monmouth and Independence. I think Wade's done a lot of the same things that we've done in terms of looking at other cities, some our size, some not. And he's found the same sort of things we found, is a lot of them rhyme, even if they're not exactly the same. And I think we're just looking forward to this process and want to make sure that the city, personally, I'll call myself an impatient optimist. I always want to go a little faster, and I always think we'll do good work. I am hoping that the city will find a consultant that doesn't spend a lot of time doing the things that the city doesn't need. Things that might already have obvious answers, because so many other small college towns may have already done this work. And so I'm hoping we find someone who has enough experience to know that and maybe help us jump ahead where we can.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your patience, because again, you guys have presented a lot of material. We just need staff. We just needed someone who found some capacity somewhere in their day to be able to move this forward. So thank you very much for that. Other questions, or I'll go ahead.
Well, a comment about that, you know, the list that I got from the Monmouth Independence Group, and going through all of the different things that everybody else was doing, it is very specific to the city in a lot of those. And Monmouth, in a lot of ways, is completely different than Independence, in that a big chunk of the measures center around energy. Our energy supply is completely different than Independence's. So, I mean, that was one of the things that stuck out to me, is that we need to craft our goals and what we're hoping to achieve specific to Monmouth, and what our needs, what our city is taking part in, what our departments are doing, and also what the cities and you know, or the citizens and businesses would like to see. So I that's going to be the most interesting thing, is when we start to craft this, is what are we going to craft specific to Monmouth? Because it was really, I created a matrix, and my plan was to go through all these plans and come up with a list and say, look, 80% of these plans have this. But even that was different for the ones that had it, because it was specific to them. And I want to be really sensitive to the fact that what we produce is actually a usable plan for Monmouth.
And because I asked how much a consultant would cost, doesn't mean I think we can afford just to like let this thing go. I'm not, it's really important financially that we take this on. So it wasn't like, oh, it's going to be too expensive to do. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. This is really important.
Right. No, and the, I've been in the industry long enough to have a feel for, I'm guessing the consultant's going to come anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000, depending on what we want. But we won't know that till the RFP comes in, and that'll be really telling. If the RFP comes back and it's a number that is something that we're not comfortable with, then that tells us something, and we may need to think about a redirection in what we're trying to achieve. But I suspect we're going to get a wide range.
Yeah, and I think, as you mentioned, a lot of that will be facilitating the citizen engagement, right? We want to have resident community engagement. We want to have, like you say, a variety of stakeholders. So I think making sure we've got somebody who's really helping us focus on that is important, because the writing and crafting, we have a lot of examples for that, but it's getting the right people to give meaningful input is what we crave. So
Right. Does our plan, is it content heavy or is it pictures and graphs heavy? Because that will play into it, how we want our plan to be presented and the cost that it goes into creating that. So.
Counselor Carey.
Good work on this, Wade. Thank you. And sort of thought-provoking and wove in, what our local group has done in terms of concepts. I guess one of the things that where I am is I don't know what I don't know. I've read a couple times through the Monmouth Independence Climate Group. And so I understand what that looks like and what that, would entail. I don't know what other cities have done. And while I appreciate and admire the work of that group, I'm not willing to say that's the only be all end all, and I don't think they are either. It might be helpful if we could take a look at a few of these prior to the RFP, because I'm guessing that I'm confident that all consultants are not the same. They can have some consultants that lean, in greenhouse gas only. Others are going to the broader view of sustainability, and everywhere in between. So, and then the whole resilience piece. So, I would like, I don't know the questions, much less the answers on a lot of this. And I think we also want to make sure that we are engaged in the contribution we can make as a city of 11,000 people, but realistic about what that would look like. And I understand that, there's a lot of building blocks that go into this. But, I believe Bill Gates, you got 62 billion metric tons to get rid of. And that's a heavy lift. But we can do a part of that if we do it wisely. So I'm just interested in more information. I'm very interested in the topic, but what are some of the other ones look like?
Like I said, I downloaded 10 or 11 different cities' climate action plans. I'm happy to get those out to the council so that you can, in PDF form, so you can view them. And it really is interesting in what some cities chose to focus on, whether it just be straight greenhouse reduction, we just want to lower our carbon footprint, which is a really good goal. But there's a whole other slew of things that go outside of that. Resiliency is a big piece of it. Land planning to preserve land. You know, and not all of these are going to be popular. This one sticks in my head, the narrowing of streets to reduce the amount of impervious ground cover. And, you know, being relatively new to Monmouth, I look at that and I think, if we did that, we'd probably have some unhappy folks because our streets are lined with cars. And so, you know, not everything is going to fit for us here. And you're right. I'm not a climate action expert. You know, I've got 20 plus years in the electric utility industry, which makes me know quite a bit about energy supply, building codes, energy use, and all those kinds of things. But when it comes to land use, waste management, all that, that's clearly outside my scope. And so it will factor into the consultant that we get somebody who has some expertise in this that helps guide us and says, we've seen this before. It doesn't really pertain to you given a certain set of parameters that we have. But as the council, I think it's the most important thing is that you're all on board with creating a set of just what are we hoping to get out of this? Is it just greenhouse gases? Is it resiliency? Is it preserving public land? Is it preserving urban forest? Is it those kinds of things? So that's where your piece is going to come in that will be the most helpful for the group that has to come up with and craft this.
The last point I meant to mention earlier, but we really need to loop the university into this.
Excuse me?
We need to loop the university into this discussion at some point soon. So they are, I mean, they're doing things, I'm sure, you know, that we would want to make sure we're in concert with and layering on top of, or they on top of us.
Yeah, the university was when I got to the, you know, stakeholder part was like, that's the number one. I mean, they're our largest entity within the city. Collectively, they're our largest energy use. They probably go through a great deal of food and all those kinds of things. And so, yeah, they will most definitely be invited to the table. And then we're all working with city staff to come up with some others that we want to have at the table, because it is going to be a big lift to come up with a plan that is cohesive and obtainable.
And just might suggest if, since we're in a Google environment at the city, if you just put those in a Google Drive folder and then share, and then that way it's not lost in an email or an attachment, and we can each go in with that link to that Google folder.
Okay.
Suzanne's writing that down, so thank you.
And I can help with that if you need.
Thank you, because I'm not a Google person.
Okay.
I know. Yes, I'm watching for people who are there for you, Wade. All right, I think that I see consent. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to thank you for working together. I think our climate change group really did a lot of work, and that's going to be really useful when we have the RSV and we have the consultant here. And I appreciate you taking this on, Wade. Thank you. It's a big lift, but you have support. You have a great group to work with, and you have a great council to work with. So I hope you feel supported, and I appreciate your work on this. Thank you.
Thank you. I like that Stephen said he was an impatient optimist, because I'm much more of a cautious realist. And so I think we will kind of even each other out. I've been doing things in the public forum for so long that I learned a long time ago to sometimes it's very beneficial to take a step back, move a little slower, and make sure it's right the first time, because trying to do it again just adds more cost and more frustration. So, but thank you so much.
Nice to have a fire lit, but that probably doesn't work with climate things. So we'll have to come up with another way.
Not on the grapevine in California at the moment.
Yeah.
So, no.
So thank you, everybody, for their work.
Yeah, Bill, go ahead and come on up.
Hi, my name's Bill Henley. I'm actually an Independence resident, but I'm on the climate committee, so hope you'll put up with me. I live at 1094 Chestnut Street in Independence. And I just wanted to bring to your attention, I'm working on this now for Independence, but some of the stuff will apply and some is common between both, like the trolley service and that sort of thing, is work with our state and federal legislators from our districts. I spoke to Paul Evans and he had a list of things that he thinks both of our cities could do and could be priorities. There's billions of dollars in the IRA targeted to climate mitigation type things, and a lot of it is targeted at rural communities, lower income communities, and it ranges all over the place. Some of it's targeted at individuals like tax credits, which I took advantage of last year for solar panels, but there's also stuff that's targeted for local and state governments to do, and also for businesses to do, like developers and that sort of thing. So I'm trying to work up a short list of things that I think are relevant to Independence and give them some guidance about where to look for that money, what subsection of the 8,000 page IRA they can find the information, and hopefully the city grant writer can get on that or communicate with the legislators or whatever. So don't think that the city has to come up with all the money to do this. There's matching money galore theoretically available if you know how to get it, I guess.
Great,
Thank you.
thanks. Too bad we don't have one of those full-time grant writers. Roxanne, Councillor Belt.
I just wanted to say also, thank you very much for the work. And, we have learned to work with goals as aspirational goals, and then we decide what the tasks are underneath those. And what I love is the idea that now we're working with Independence together, Independence and Monmouth, we can model this behavior because Polk County does not have a climate action plan, and they should. So we can help them figure out how to do this.
Thank you.
All right, I think we feel comfortable with the direction you've offered. Yeah, do you want to go ahead? Sure.
My name is Skip Wenz, and I fully know, I've been studying this issue for many, many years, and I fully appreciate how difficult it is to get a frame on the thing, get a scope going. One thing that I'm going to say, leave everybody, and I really appreciate the fact that the city is taking this on, and I really appreciate the fact that there's some optimism, some enthusiasm here. But one thing that I do want to say tonight is that the situation overall is far more tenuous and far more urgent than I think that we may realize. And I'll just give you a little quick story. My wife and I live over on the edge of town near campus, over on Susanna Street. And last summer in August, there was our next door neighbor who's, for some reason, likes to listen to the police radio all the time, came running over and said, "There's a fire a few blocks from here, a big fire." And what to do. So we've been near some of the big fires in California. One of them was when we were in Santa Rosa, when that big fire hit down there, and it jumped from one county to the other in about 5 hours. And by the end of that evening, it had burned 1,000 houses in Santa Rosa. So we were over there. So I immediately got online and tried to get in touch with everybody, with all the different agencies and so on and so forth. Couldn't get any information at all. We packed the car, got ready to go to our daughter's house down in, just leave the house, threw the dog and some money and some papers in there, and we're ready to go. And I said, well, finally, as a last resort, since we can't find anything out, why don't we go by the fire department on our way out and see if anybody there knows anything? And I'd made six phone calls at least by then. So we go to the fire department, there's nobody around, and I go in and start yelling, and some guy crawls out from under a fire truck, and he says, "Oh yeah, that thing was it was pretty major, and it was jumping into trees and getting over near your neighborhood, but it was put out." So that's good to know. Very good to know. But my point is, of this little story is that one of the things that I think should be in the early levels of all these planning and so on is to, and some of these things are pretty affordable, is to prioritize hardening, or whatever you want to call it, being ready for emergencies that are liable to happen related to the climate issue. Fire being one of them, floods we're all familiar with. And it turns out to be the same kind of stuff that you might do to prepare for an earthquake and so on. And I'll just give you one example. When I was a kid, little town in Colorado, they still had, basically, it was the town whistle. I don't know if any of you remember those, but the noon whistle would go off, everything. And they were also used for air raid sirens, in case, the Japanese flew over Durango, Colorado, and we start dropping bombs. Pretty unlikely scenario, but they were for general emergencies. The only way we happened to hear about this fire that was a few blocks from our house, and for a while looked like it might be getting out of control, was because our next door neighbor, by coincidence, on an August evening, happened to be listening to the police radio. It would seem to me that something along the line of a warning signal, because not everybody's looking at their cell phone all the time. They might be out mowing the lawn or something. Something that was quite affordable in the way of something like that. Okay, so everybody, and let everybody know, that's a whole other thing. I don't know where to go if there was an earthquake. Is the high school earthquake proof? Is it a place we could go and hang out afterwards? So let everybody know what's happening. And if this whistle blows 3 times at 2 o'clock in the morning, you wake up and you look at your cell phone, and as you find out there's something going on there, kind of like an Amber Alert or something like that. So those types of things, they're cheap, basically, and easy. And I think that that's one aspect. There's also all the decarbonization and all the other complicated issues. But I think that's one aspect that I would really like to see considered as you start to move forward with this process.
Thank you.
Something
I
can be
think
done
we'll
quickly.
have a lot of different aspects, and certainly emergency response is one of those.
Yeah,
So
emergency response, you call it that,
Yeah.
but that whole thing.
Okay.
Because I woke up one morning, 2 summers ago, and I opened up the windows on a nice morning in the summer, and it was pitch black outside. There's that smoke coming down out of that fire up there in the hills.
Yep. We have.
Anyway, that's
All right, thank
one
you.
aspect. All these people have
No,
lots
we're going to go ahead and move on, I think.
Except I need him to
Plenty of
repeat his
opportunity
name.
for further comments.
I'm sorry, say it again, please.
We're going to go ahead and move on to the rest of
Yeah,
our
yeah, yeah.
agenda and
I do need him to repeat his name for the record, please.
Oh, my name is Skip Wems, W-E-M-Z.
Thank you.
thank you, Phyllis. Okay, thank you, Wade. Really, really appreciate that.
Thank
So-
you.
All right, that takes us to our standing reports, and I don't have much for the mayor's report. I do want to say we did have a joyous and very wet commencement at Western Oregon University, but really our town looked great. Families and folks were here and enjoying it, and we did send off another amazing group of graduates of Western Oregon, so that's been exciting. And just to let you all know, speaking of our federal and state delegation, on Thursday, Christy and I, and maybe Suzanne and Carter, I don't know who all's coming. We have actually, maybe Kevin is coming. We actually have a meeting that's being called by Senator Merkley's office to get folks together and talk about trolley funding and looking at federal options for that and sort of doing some planning. So that's going to be coming up this week as well. And that takes us to reports of boards and commissions. Councilor Oberst, briefly.
Last night, we had the very first meeting of the Transportation Commission. Linda Bersani is the new chair. Kyle Johnson is the vice chair, and Mike Kissel stepped up to be secretary. Probably the biggest thing for the community in general is that we have the Transportation Systems Plan open house coming up on July 23rd here at, to be determined, 6th, maybe, we'll nail that down. And this meeting tonight with Parks Master Plan really points out how important it is to come to these public comment opportunities for our planning documents to give us the input of how you feel about the things that we're sketching into place at this point. So I would urge everyone to come to that. Just quickly, the actual business of the meeting, we've had some problems with speeding on Clay Street. The PD has put out the reader board, a little bit of spot enforcement, some messaging at WU, and the long-term plan, Transportation Systems Plan, may include some traffic calming devices along that stretch of Clay Street from Monmouth out to the highway. I know there's a staff member who will be thrilled to know that where Whitesell meets Real Road, we're going to push the yellow curb back up Whitesell a little bit to make the mouth of the street a little more accessible because it's kind of tight sometimes. On new business, Linda Bersani put together and ran a fabulous bike rodeo. Really good turnout, really good response. She said the only problem is all the other schools want one now too. So this is going to be a an ongoing project for her, I think. And then we have plans for some of the electronic speed feedback signs that will say, hey, it's 35 and you're going 48. And one of those will be coming into town from the north on the highway, where there's a 30-mile-an-hour sign now, sort of between the bridge over Ash Creek and the police station. Another one south of town, right around Gwynn Street, and then one coming in Falls City Highway. We do have some speeding problems there as well. And then finally, way back before Highway 99 was rebuilt, we requested a speed study from ODOT on South 99, and they said, we need to finish the construction. We need to see how all that shakes out. So it hasn't been done. It hasn't been done. Russ has put together some proposals, and I think we'll be heading towards a speed study before too long because he's going to say to ODOT, this is kind of what we'd like to see, and that hopefully will spur an actual speed study and some results, and maybe some lowered speeds, particularly coming in from the south, where we now have Gwynn Street that we didn't used to have when the speed signs went in where they are now. So we'll see how all that shakes out. And that's all I've got. Oh, Church Street rapid rectangular rapid flashing beacons are also on the way this summer. Yes. The rest is yes.
Great. Other boards and commissions. Councilor McKee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have the library board meeting. Just a couple things. The CCRLS is going to be purchasing hotspots, and we're going to get about 6 of them. So that'll be good for us. Anyway, also I just want to do a shout out for Deanna and Carrie at the library who put together the Library of Things collection. So you can get boombox, webcams, DVD players, launch pads. Just got to go check it out. It's lots of fun stuff. And summer reading is up and running, so time to sign up. Oh, and I guess we meet the second Wednesday of the month at 7 a.m.
Councilor Belt.
I went to the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments meeting today. We approved the 24-25 budget, had department updates. The 2 most interesting things for this council would be on August the 20th, there will be what's called a legislative gathering. Legislators will be there. The council is invited August the 20th, 4 to 6 at Chemeketa College in the agricultural complex. If you're interested, I can get the address. Lastly, at our COG meetings, we used to have time at the end of the meeting for cities to share updates and information of what's going on in their communities, but because our meetings run so long, we don't do that anymore. So the executive leadership decided we will encourage city staff and councilors or board members, anybody, to share updates to Linda Hansen at the COG so that they can include it in the COG Connection newsletter. So that comes out sort of every 2 weeks. I was trying to figure out how often it comes out, and it's kind of monthly, kind of every 2 weeks. But we have so many good things going on, and I'm going to try to take what our city manager sends to us on Fridays, and our new city manager will continue to send them to us on Fridays, I hope, and summarize that so that we can have some of our good news in the COG newsletter. Thank you.
Councilor Kerr.
Planning Commission met 2 weeks ago and had a design review on the sort of remodel of what they're calling the Monmouth Cultural Center, which is, the old bank building down here across from the new bank, Broad and Main. There's actually 4 buildings in there, 4 structures, and the developer has plans to utilize all of those on things that would be very, I mean, a restaurant, wine bar, theater, art gallery, if I recall correctly. And so that went well. And then there was considerable discussion, probably more than there needed to be, about the acceptance, basically, of the new master plan for Western Oregon University. Suzanne was very patient, and that was approved. And that's a living document, of course. And so, and it's a guidance. It's an aspirational thing. But a good discussion all the way around, and positive things going on down the street now. So looking forward to that. And no meeting this tomorrow. That's been canceled. In case you were going to log in and check the conversation.
Any others? All right, yeah, and a lot of our boards and commissions take the summer off, so. But reminder to everyone, we do have a meeting on July 2nd. We are going to just have a kind of a quick discussion, well, might not be quick, discussion about the police safety fee that we wanted to get information on. And then we will have our town hall. You notice that was originally scheduled for the 11th. That has changed to the 15th. The 15th. So that was in order to actually have a presentation by our finance director on the police safety fee discussion. That she would not be available on the 11th. So we'll have that on the 15th. Also, that will be a town hall, which will also have our introduction of our new city manager. Rochelle Roden will be on board by then. And for everyone's excitement, we will be revealing the new city logo and branding coming up. And I think we all just got an email about that. So on July 2nd, prior to our work session from 5 to 6:15, our city communications coordinator will be sharing that with us and talking through a little bit about the process and how that came to be. So you just got an email on that. Those will be our coming up meetings. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to since our interim city manager is on vacation, our pro tem city manager and community and economic development director, Suzanne Dubner.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And Christy Worcester is out on a well-earned, deserved vacation this week, so she'll be back on Friday. So thanks for your patience as I'm just stepping in. And Mayor, actually, you had a lot of my announcements about the upcoming event, so thank you. I will be very brief. Just a reminder that Ron Wilson on June 27th at 5:00 p.m. Will be holding their 50th anniversary party, and also they're combining it with their new office grand opening. So you can go in and see their brand new building just down here on the corner of Clay and Monmouth Avenue. They'll have food, they'll have tours, there's some music in the parking lot. So should be really great. City has been involved in doing rezoning and design review. This was about a 4-year process they've gone through. So it's nice to be able to celebrate that very special occasion with them. And then, of course, we've got the July 4th festival that's coming up, celebrated on July 3rd and 4th this year. So it is a free event. We are not charging to enter in that. We have over 50 vendors for it with handcrafted items, various food carts. I've heard there's a shaved ice vendor this year, which I'm looking forward to on the hot weather. They're still looking for floats, I believe, people that want to enter into the Rotary Parade. We do also can use extra set of hands, setting up, taking down, or working various shifts at the information booth. So if you're out and about, we'd love your help. Just get a hold of Carter or Phyllis. They're the ones, thankfully, that are doing all the hard work and lifting on this festival planning. And then just kind of update on a meeting that I attended on Monday. Congresswoman Andrea Salinas hosted a rural economic development workshop over in Independence where they invited mayors and city managers and various state and federal agencies, funding partners from Marion, Polk, and Yamhill counties, and had a really great discussion about how to get more federal funds and assistance out to rural communities, how to build that capacity. There are funds available and they understand their barriers, but how do we overcome that and kind of align, they call it stacking funding sources, so that we know it's hard to fund one project with just one funding source these days. So local, state, federal, being able to align those. So that was a really great discussion, and I'm looking forward to the working with our partners. And really the take home was we have to be in touch with both our state and federal representatives and let them know our needs, and they'll help get us in touch with the right staff and get us on our way. There's lots of technical assistance out there. So it was a great meeting. That's all I have.
Thank you. And thank you for attending that. And with actually Dr. Andrea Salinas, she was presented with the first ever honorary doctorate of humane letters from Western Oregon University when she was the commencement speaker on Saturday. And it was a huge surprise to her. So it was very, very cool. All right. And with that, any other comments or announcements, Councilor Carroll?
Just thank you for counselors and staff and Phyllis for the card and flowers on the passing of my mother on June 3rd. And I appreciate the sentiment and appreciate the thought, and thank you.
I wanted.
So, thank you, Kevin, very much.
Just a reminder, Juneteenth is tomorrow, so if there's a celebration at the Senior Center, 6:30 to 8 with a couple speakers, and if you can't go to the celebration, then it's a good time to reflect on the Juneteenth holiday and the importance of that to our country and our community.
And a motion, anyone?
I move to adjourn.
To adjourn.
All in favor, please signify by
Yes.
getting up and running out of here because, oh my gosh, who had 9:30 on the pool? 9:27. Ooh. Pretty close, pretty close. All right, we are adjourned.